I'm Lindsey Hall. I've been attending Elevate Church since August 2014. I was originally saved when I was a young girl, probably around the age of 4. My parents, Keith and Loretta, you know them, we went to a little small church in Buchel, and basically I was raised in a very tight-knit, family-oriented church that I felt each one of them was really like my blood, it felt like. I grew up pretty much knowing everything in the Bible and just being taught by really great people and having the Holy Spirit indwell in me. Probably, I'd say from like 8 to 10 years old. So I grew up in a very traditional church home. We went every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and my parents didn't deal with any deviation. I would get in trouble if I didn't go. And although at the time I didn't appreciate it, I appreciate it much more now. I think it gave me a firm foundation and helped me be the person strong enough to go through the things I have in life. Probably around high school is where even though I made good grades and everything, I started to want to be a bad girl and hang out with a negative crowd. I met a boy around 16, and basically he was very abusive, and I think that set the stage for the rest of the relationships I had in my life, and definitely affected my self-esteem and allowed me to be easily controlled and not stand up for myself. Around 25, I met my husband, or ex-husband, should I say, and we got married. I had my beautiful daughter, Maya, and we were in and out of church. Never could find one that I really felt, I guess, was my home. And then shortly after our marriage fell apart, and I had moved to Maryland and Georgia, and I finally came back home to Louisville, and that's where we finally got a divorce, and I just was having to struggle raising Maya, being single. I'm disabled due to Crohn's disease, and just financially, emotionally, everything. Around 2009, around the divorce time, I did not know how I was going to survive. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent or bills, even food. I had no way of working because I was in and out of the hospital so much, seeing like 6 different doctors, and I had filed for disability and I had been denied twice, and I prayed, God, if this is what you want for my life, please make this happen, because I don't know how I'm going to survive. It was very scary, and I didn't want to live off anybody anymore. I had asked for all the handouts I could. So I remember the day perfectly that God answered my prayer, and I was able to be blessed with a significant disability payment, and I could raise Maya without having to ask for any help anymore. So my family, my dad and my mom are divorced, and they have me and my sister, and then I have another brother and a younger sister. And basically, we all grew up in church, My mom's side comes from a really strong singing background and always in church. My aunt even ran a church when I was younger. And then my dad's family, of course, I've always been raised in church with him. It's just a traditional, really strong Christian background. Me and my sister used to sing together since we were little kids. And she was definitely my best friend and the person I always looked to for guidance, and I really looked up to her. I would say when I returned to Louisville that the few years that I hadn't been here, me and my sister, we still had been close, but we began to grow closer, and I would go and visit her in Elizabethtown probably every weekend I could. When I thought of my family, I thought there's nothing that can ever devastate us. There's nothing that could hurt us. We were that close, that tight. So it was on those weekends that my sister, I would go out there, and she drank very heavy. And I would say that I enabled her because I would go out there and we'd all drink together. We'd all party. And even though I had God as my firm foundation, I wasn't really living right. It was my dad's birthday, or the night before, and it was the last weekend that I had before Maya came back from the summer. And there had been a long history of her husband who he harassed me, he made inappropriate comments, and I knew that if I could just stay out of a room with him that I'd be okay. I never thought of anything bad happening. I never. But it was basically one night, that last night, and I got up that next day on my dad's birthday, and I knew something had happened. So I got out of there, and I remember thinking to myself, I can't ruin my dad's birthday. I can't ruin my dad's birthday. So I went to his birthday, and my sister and her husband, who never shows up to these things, shows up, and there was a weird tension. And my father, later on, looking back, he knew, Loretta knew. I left there very fast, and I decided to just go home. And I was in a really bad denial about what had happened. I knew that I had been sexually assaulted, but I was in denial, and I lied to myself, and I imagined every possible scenario that this could go, because she was my best friend, and our kids were best friends, and my family was close. I had a kit done, and I held it, and I didn't tell anybody. And I sat in an ER for 20 hours probably without anybody knowing. God knew. God saw me. He knew. He told me what to do. I finally called my ex-husband, out of all the people, but we were still good friends. I called him, and he came, and he convinced me to tell my dad. And if you think that the pain of that is hard when you talk to your dad and you tell them something like that, there's just not words. There's not words to explain. Because I'm a daddy's girl. So anyhow, basically, I gave my sister a choice. as crazy as it is, I thought that if I went to her, that she would be on, not take sides, but just that there could be like a resolution that didn't involve cops or investigation teams, and she left me a voicemail calling me a princess, saying that I wanted to destroy her family, and never spoke to me again. And we still haven't talked to this day. After we decided to report, and I had met with an officer, and they decided that my case had enough evidence to investigate, they moved ahead with everything, and it felt like a whirlwind. It felt like I was just overcome with a million emotions, from each of my family members finding out to not knowing what was in the future, because I'd never dealt with the court system. I do know that for the next 2 years, I pretty much laid in my bed. When it got towards the end that last year, and basically, it seemed like forever for DNA to come back and matches and everything and proving, and they knew they had a good, strong case, and pretty much it was like the prosecution can't lose, is when the lies started. And my family and people that had met me for 1 minute didn't even know me, people that had known me all my life, they told lies about me. They attacked my character, my integrity. They pretty much, at one moment, took everything from me that I could think of. I had nothing left. If you want to know what it's like to be broken, it wasn't even that happened. It was what the people that I love the most did to me. I felt even suicidal at that point, like empty, and like people didn't even really like me. Like people that I thought had loved me my whole life they didn't even like me, like the person I was, and then I didn't feel free to be me. So I just withdrew. The worst maybe wasn't over, but this is where I started to feel God more than ever. I read the Bible more than I ever had. I tell people I went to the church at TBN. Something switched inside of me, and I just felt that you can either die, you can lay here and let this kill you, or you can, because that's what a lot of people do when they come against something like this, or you can turn to God. Things started to turn around. My father, who probably was in the worst position of all, having to choose between 2 different daughters, or not even choose, but just show that he still loved both of us and support us. He had to basically take a stand where he was going to show up in that courtroom or not, and he was there for me. God sent me people. God sent me people that loved me, that showed me I was valuable and worthy. August, I came here, and my trial had been delayed from April to the end of August, and I started coming to Elevate at the beginning of August, and nobody here knew anything I was going through. You didn't look at me different. You didn't treat me like I was a victim, because I didn't want to be that either. I didn't want to be sad. I didn't want to be the sad victim. I didn't want to be
I wanted people to see I was strong and not pity me. So you all started praying. You knew what was going on. You prayed for my situation and my family, and I didn't know how I was going to face it. And at the very end, right when I'm getting ready to have to go to trial and sit up and tell graphic details in front of my father and the people I love, God came through it. It wasn't even a way I thought he would come through. And I remember I was walking, pacing around, and I was crying to God. When I say I screamed at God, I don't mean angry. I said, God, you have a plan for my life, for my family, and whatever you decide to do, I'll be okay with it, and I'll know it's your will. And I got a phone call as soon as I prayed that he took the plea deal. My family's not perfect, and we're not near restored to where we should be, but God's still working on us, and I know that he's going to bring great things, and he can change a situation where you think there is no way out. He'll make a totally different path. He will carve an entire new path, and you'll be able to walk through and almost come out, I won't say unharmed, but changed. God has helped me forgive to the point that I realize forgiveness doesn't mean that you accept it. It doesn't mean that you approve of it. But I'm giving it to him, and he works on my heart every day. And hopefully one day when he brings my sister back, I can hug her like the prodigal son. He came in and he gave me a church that loves me. He gave me you all. He gave me some confidence back, allowing me to sing and worship him. And people look at me and I knew they were genuine for the first time in a really long time. Have I not commanded thee, be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, wheresoever thou goest. I think of Joshua, because God said he'll never leave him, never forsake him. That was like me. I was David with Goliath. That's what it felt like. I felt like there was no way I could get through this. But God hurts with us. He told me that his heart hurt, and that he loved me. And he showed me through not just things he would say to me and through his word, but through my church and through my relationships with the people that I do have left. Back then it was like, wow, everybody's gone. Now it's like, now I have people surrounding me that I know that they're better than ever. The relationships are stronger, and I really do believe they're unbreakable. I do. Because they've been with me through the worst, but I'm better because of what's happened to me. And of course, nobody would say if I had it to do over, but I don't think God could use me like I was. I grew up in church, and I don't think that I was as close as I even thought I was. I know I wasn't. He humbled me, and he drew me in closer to him, and my faith it's unshakable. I have my moments, but it's unshakable. I just have to remind myself sometimes, and sometimes he will too. Do you remember where you were? I'm like, thanks God, I needed that. So I hope that people are encouraged, that they see that God continues to work in your life, and if you'll let him, he'll use you. He'll use that circumstance, he'll use that storm, and you just don't know how many people that you can reach or touch or help. Jeremiah 33:3, call unto me, I'll answer thee and show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not.